if chapter 4 were important, chapter 5 really gets us into the nitty-gritty and also explains some of the things that have gone before. Now, Victor has been confined in his filthy workshop, and finally on a dreary night in November, he infuses his work with life. And he says, "It breathed hard, and a convulsive motion agitated his limbs," which is exactly what happens upon giving a birth. The child opens, the child's limbs are agitated, the baby, I should say. But instead of being pleased with his work, he says, "How can I describe my emotions at this catastrophe, or how delineate the wretch whom with such infinite pains and care I had endeavored to form? His limbs were in proportion, and I had selected his features as beautiful. Beautiful, great God! His yellow skin scarcely covered the work of muscles and arteries beneath. His hair was of a lustrous black and flowing, his teeth of a pearly whiteness. But these luxuriances only formed a more horrid contrast with his watery eyes that seemed almost of the same color as the dun white sockets in which they were set, his shriveled complexion and straight black lips." Victor has not created something of beauty. He has created something not historically, but horribly distorted and deformed. And this harkens back to earlier chapters when he talked about the creations of the philosophers, or the ideas of the philosophers as being abortive and deformed. And this is what he has produced. Now, abortive doesn't figure here because, of course, he hasn't aborted his creature, but it is most certainly deformed. And one thing that all of the movies that have portrayed Frankenstein's creature seems to have overlooked is that the creature had very feminine aspects. You see the Frankenstein from the 30s and the hair. And you also see Robert De Niro as the creature and has a shaved head. The creature had long and flowing black hair, and he had pearly white teeth. And some people who have analyzed the creature say that he is very feminine. And even though we don't have time to go into it, he shares many aspects with Eve in Paradise Lost. And Frankenstein is a parody of Milton's long poem, Paradise Lost. And by parody, I don't mean it makes fun of it, but it takes many aspects from it. So now Victor has his offspring. He has his baby. After months and months of labor, Victor is a male mother. And he goes on to say, "I'd worked hard for nearly 2 years for the sole purpose of infusing life into an inanimate body. I deprived myself rest and health. I had desired it with an ardor that far exceeded moderation. But now that I had finished, the beauty of the dream vanished, and the breathless horror and disgust filled my heart." And so what does he do? He bolts. He runs away from his creature, and he goes to bed, and he goes to sleep, and he has a dream. And it is a dream of Elizabeth. And he dreams that he sees Elizabeth, and she's walking on the streets of Ingolstadt. And he's really happy to see her, and he runs to her, and he embraces her. But as soon as he touches her, he thought that I held the corpse of my dead mother in my arms. A shroud enveloped her form, and I saw the grave worms crawling in the folds of the flannel. Life and death. This creation, which has not turned out to be the way that he wants to, brings back his association with life and death. And there is Elizabeth, to whom he is betrothed and plans on marrying. But when he touches her, she turns into the dead mother. So birth only brings death. And we will see this later, how this affects his association with Elizabeth on their wedding night later in the novel.